Okay, let me know when you're coming on. Ooh. Let me know when you're coming on. Ready to rock and roll. Hey, Sunshine, what's up? What's up? How you doing? How you doing? All right. Yeah, we're ready to get started. It's been a very busy day, but I could not wait to, hey, Dana, could not wait to take some time to talk to my people. All right, let's see who else we have here. Let's see, let me know as you're coming on. All right, yeah, we're just having a little video challenges here. All right. So Dana and Sunshine, let's just let people know where you're coming in from. Hey Veronica. Hey Veronica, how are you? There's some technical difficulties here. All right. Hey, Shelly, how are you? Hey. Awesome. Okay, guys. Well, I'm excited to be on. It's a lot going on in our world, but I could not wait to get online to share with you guys, okay? And we're going to jump right into it because tonight is quite deep. All right, let's get rocking and rolling. First of all, I want to remind you guys, you're still free. All right, so that's a good thing. But we are going to be switching that. We just have to work out a few more bugs, and we're going to be doing that. So let's hold on. Okay, my producer is helping me here. All right. Okay, great. Okay, now can everybody see me? Is that good? All right, great. All right. Please tell your friends about the app. We have changed our pricing for it, and once we work out a few more bugs, we're going to be sharing with you. And again, as we said, we're going to going into a subscription-based service. But we are going to still be meeting every week and bringing on some more professionals, etc., to talk to you about a number of different things. All right, Sunshine in Florida, Dana in Pennsylvania, Shelly in Atlanta. Awesome. Okay, let's jump right into it. Sunday morning versus Saturday night. What happens when you and your spouse aren't on the same page spiritually? Okay, let's deal with this. One of the things, whenever I was putting couples together on Married at First Sight, one thing that I was constantly responsible for, was to make sure that they were spiritually compatible. As a spiritual advisor on the show, the question became, what are your spiritual compatibilities? And I was often asked and sometimes criticized for putting people together who sometimes may have been of different denominations or different religions or what have you, But here's the thing. We're going to talk about this. Because in some situations, it's like one of y'all is at the altar on Sunday morning and one of y'all is at the bar on Saturday night. And how do you reconcile it? How do you deal with that? And if you've had any experiences like that, first of all, I want you to give me a thumbs up, if you've ever had experience in your relationship. Because what I want you to share with you here is that the real issue is not about church. The real issue is not about church. Okay, let's make that very clear. Right. That's not the issue. Spiritual alignment is not always about what church you go to. It's really not even about what denomination you are. It's more about what are your values, what are your priorities, and what is your spiritual identity. That's more so in line with what we're talking about when we're talking about being aligned spiritually. I've seen a lot of couples who have chosen not to be together because they were not spiritually aligned. Now, for the religious folk, they use a term called unequally yoked. I want to be with somebody who I'm equally yoked with. Do you have any idea what yoking is? What it even means? The whole idea of being unequally yoked has to do with the ancient Hebrew culture where they would have an oxen, and you've probably seen it in movies or pictures or whatever. You have two ox, and they have the thing on their shoulders called a yoke that connects them to connects them together. And the thing you gotta understand, hey Leah, the thing you got to understand is that if I have an ox and I have a great big ox here and a little bitty ox there, you can't yoke them together. One is going to be stronger than the other. One is going to pull the other one. It's just not going to be a good thing. Okay? So when it comes to yoking, you have to understand that idea of being equally yoked has to do with making sure that both of you are at least have equal strengths, equal challenges, compatible challenges, and that you're pulling in the same direction. All right? So the real issue is not about church. It's about values. It's about priorities. It's about those kinds of things. It's about your identity. So let's set the stage. When we talk about this, I want you to know that two people can sit in the same pew and be spiritually unaligned. Yeah. The opposite. Two people can be in different religions and be spiritually aligned. Now that will probably upset some people. But it's the truth. Okay? Because if we're talking about values and not just about denominations or any of that stuff, there's a whole different understanding. Okay? So the real thing we have to ask ourselves here is what type are you? I'm going to describe two types. Are you the spiritual one in the relationship, or are you type B where your spouse is? Or type C where you both are on the same page? I want you to answer this. Are you type A? Are you the spiritual one in the relationship? Or are you type B where your spouse is the spiritual one? Or are you type C where you're both on the same page? I want you to put that in there. Just put in an A, B, or C. Are you the spiritual one, A? Is your spouse the spiritual one, B? Or are you both on the same page? I just need to do a poll here. Okay, Sunshine says A. Timothy says C. Wendy says C. Thank you, Wendy. You better say C. Tamika says A. Okay. All right. Irma says C. Okay. Now I'm going to share something with you as we're talking about this. And thank you so much for participating in my little unofficial poll. For you C's, okay, great. I'm going to come back to that. But for you A's, that is not a failure. When you say you are the spiritual one, okay, first of all, how do you know you are? You can feel free to answer that. Type A, you're the spiritual one in the relationship. Type B, your spouse is. Type C, you're both on the same page. How do you know you are the spiritual one in the relationship? And what does that look like? Because if you're saying that I'm the only one who wants to go to church, doesn't necessarily mean you're the spiritual one. A person can be spiritual and not go to church, or not want to go to church all the time. So I want to make the differentiation between spirituality and religiosity. Okay, so I need to know when you say you're the spiritual one, feel free to just type and let me know when you get ready to type which one you are. And when you type the answer to which one you are, why do you feel that way? Because here's the real conflict. And why is this exactly? How does one measure spirituality? We're going to talk about that. Because here's the real conflict. The real friction begins when... well, let me answer this before I go any further. Sunshine says, our values, priorities are not aligned. Okay. Counseling break. Our values and priorities are not aligned. Are you married? I'm asking that. If you're married, then this is something that's going to require some in-depth communication. Because your values must be at least compatible. And what I find is that when people say that their values are not aligned, sometimes the question might be, are your values defined? Do you really know what those values are? When I think about my values, when I think about my values, my values are family. Family is a value. Everything I do is around family, relationship. That's my thing. My value is loyalty. All right. I don't do. We gotta be. My value is respect. All right. Those are some of the values that I have. Now, are my values aligned with my partner, Wendy, who's always on the phone? Are my values aligned with her? They may not be her values. But as long as she understands what my values are and she can be compatible with them, we still can work. But if she's looking at my values and realizing that this is something that's completely incongruent with who she is and who she wants to be, that's a different ballgame. Not married, not in a relationship. Now I was. Yes, my values were clearly defined. Person did not respect. Okay, perfect. Now, if that person did not respect your values, then you are unequally yoked, Because we don't have to have the same values, but we have to respect each other's values. If my values are family and you grew up in a single life and it's like, well, it ain't no big deal, but I understand why you feel that way and I want to support you in that. What you will find is that in a relationship, what will happen is that even if you have different values, what will happen quite often is that you'll start to find that your values start to merge. And before you know it, you're kind of like in sync. Even though that may not have been your value. And it still may not be, but you're in sync because you love that person. You want to do whatever it takes to please them. You want to do whatever it takes, to make sure that they feel comfortable in the relationship. Let's deal with this real quick. So why does this incongruency in spirituality create conflict? 1, the guilt and judgment trap. All right. We're good on time. The unchurched or unspiritual spouse, the churched or spiritual spouse sometimes quietly judges and the other spouse constantly feels convicted. This may be one reason there's friction because there's a guilt trap and neither one says it out loud, but both just feel it. You feel that you're being judged or you feel that you're being criticized because you're not as spiritual as the other person. All right. That could be a problem. I'm just saying why conflict happens when there's spiritual misalignment. Because one person, the spiritual person, might feel as though because they are spiritual, they might be a little bit more of value than the other person. All right? That's one reason. Wendy says, what if you're married and realize after the fact that your values are not aligned? That is a problem. But it's not fatal. Even if you realize that your values are not aligned, we have to go back to why you married in the first place. Because I believe that your values may have been compatible, you've just forgotten or never knew how to make them work together. So it may not have ever been that they may not have been aligned. Your values may be different, but you have to learn how to make them aligned. Even if you're married and you find out, wait a minute, our values are not the same. It may be okay. You have to work together. I'm a gregarious person. I love being around people. I'm a people person. You're kind of a wallflower. You kind of sit back. That ain't one of your values. No. But what you'll do is you'll support me from afar. You won't take the limelight. You won't be out there, but you'll support me. You'll be there. And I will understand your solitude. And I'll say, and I won't expect to pull you in. Okay? It's about knowing how to create this dance of alignment. Okay? No, it's about knowing how to make that work. So when we talk about spiritual alignment, we're not always talking about church and religion. We're talking about values also. Okay? All right. So that's the first thing, the guilt and judgment trap. The second reason that you might find a problem with this spiritual alignment is when children are involved and how we're going to raise them. This is where, our misalignment gets really loud, when there are different spiritual foundations and different moral frameworks, that causes real conflict. One of the biggest challenges I saw in matching couples was when people said, well, I want to know how we're raising our children. I did one show called Bride and Prejudice, where I had someone who was a Jew and someone who was not a Jew, and they were married, or they wanted to be married, and the whole premise of the show was how do we get them to accept each other's values. And the non-Jewish person said, well, I don't want to convert to Judaism. And the Jewish person said, well, the only way we're going to do this is if you do convert. And I was trying to get them to see, well, is conversion necessary? Are we talking about cultural Judaism? Or are we talking about doctrinal or spiritual Judaism? Because if it's cultural Judaism, the conversion may not be necessary. Okay? Well, anyway, that's a lot. All right, let's continue. So that's another reason why there may be conflict with spiritual misalignment. A third one is the community divide. When your church family becomes your family, hear me out now, because this happens quite a lot. When the church family becomes your family and your spouse feels like an outsider, it causes social isolation. And we find that a lot, especially in the age of mega churches. Back in the day when you had small churches, even actually, to be very honest, mega churches are a little bit more separate, where they have small groups. But back in the day when there were a more community in churches, like our church is built on community. It's easy for the spouse who's not a part of it to feel like they're being socially isolated, or the non-attending spouse becomes, underrated. It's like this person, is the one who is causing problems in the marriage. So that's a problem also that causes friction in misalignment of spiritual values. Okay. Any questions out there? Because we rocking and rolling. We only got a little time left. Okay. So here's what doesn't work when you're misaligned, or when you feel as though. Here's what does not work. Now, I asked y'all earlier to let me know if why do you feel you're the most spiritual person? Ain't nobody said nothing. I guess you rethought that, didn't you? Okay, here's another question. Which of these doesn't work? What doesn't work, rather, when it comes to spiritual alignment? Dragging your spouse to church and calling it unity. I pastored for a number of years, and I saw a number of husbands, mostly husbands. Very seldom did I see wives doing this. But mostly husbands were dragged to church by their wives and just sat there frustrated to death. And the wife was like, oh, we in church. Oh, we doing great. Oh, no. He don't want to be there. All right? It reminds me of we have a very thriving couple in our church now. When she started coming, he would just sit in the parking lot, would not come in. I ain't gonna mention his name because you know who you are. He would not come in. And then all of a sudden, I saw him out there one day. I said, let me go talk to this brother. He was a real cool dude. I sat there and I went and talked to him. And I know what he was expecting, because I'm the pastor. He was expecting me to talk to him about church. I talked to him about everything except church. We never talked about church. We talked about where he's from, about New York. We talked about We talked about his clothing. We talked about everything but church. He recently said, I want to thank you for the conversation that we never had, which was a conversation about church. And I thought that was such a cool thing to say, But because dragging your spouse to church is not a good thing, okay? Secondly, this doesn't work. Making your spiritual life a weapon in arguments does not work. When you make your spiritual life a weapon in argument, well, I know Jesus. God is going to get you. God don't like ugly. That's some crazy crap. Don't ever tell your spouse nothing crazy like that. Promise me you won't. Okay, Wendy says, but what if the non-attending spouse is not interested in going to church? Does that mean they are not as spiritual? Absolutely not. That does not mean they're not as spiritual as you are. It means that maybe the church is not for them. Or maybe there needs to be a different church that's more amenable to who they are. Understand something. You may like shouting and preaching and praising. He'll make a way. He don't like that. Or she don't like that. Y'all feeling me? I hope you're getting this. I hope this makes sense to you, okay? Praying for your spouse to change instead of praying for your spouse. That doesn't work. Praying for your spouse to change instead of praying for your spouse. That does not work either. Now, let's talk about what does work. Okay? Okay, wait a minute. First of all, Shelley says something. Partners may need spiritual fulfillment in different ways. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Here's what does work. First of all, and this comes from the MAPS framework. Meet your spouse where they are, not where you want them to be. Respect is the bridge. Contempt burns it down. So the M is to meet your spouse where they are. Secondly, the A, align on values, even if not on doctrine. And this is so hard for people to get. Align on values, even if not on doctrine. Find where they overlap. If it's integrity, if it's family, if it's generosity, if it's growth, if it's kindness. Focus on those things. Don't focus on church. P, protect the marriage first. That's the most important thing. Your spouse is not your mission project. It's your spouse. Okay? It's your spouse. It's not your mission project. They're your partner. And S, shared spiritual practices that don't require agreement. Share spiritual practices that don't require agreement. For instance, gratitude rituals or family values conversations or feeding the homeless or giving to a charity or doing any of those kinds of things. These things don't need a church. So if you want to connect, meet them where they are, not where you want them to be. Respect, not contempt. That's M. A, align on values. Find out what those values are. Even if your doctrines don't comport, find out what those values are. P, protect the marriage first. That is your first priority because the person you married is a good person. All right? And S, share spiritual practices that have nothing to do with church, like gratitude and feeding homelessness, etc., etc. Okay? Are you with me? Look, our time is just about up, okay? Lastly, I want to close with this. This week, what's one step you can take this week to close the spiritual gap in your relationship? Not by changing your spouse, but by showing up differently yourself. Okay? I want you to think about that. What is the one thing you can do to close the gap with your spouse? Okay. Leah says she agrees with Wendy. Counseling and in-depth conversations are vital to figure out things and make decisions together. You're absolutely right. Okay. Look, our time is up. Okay. And I want to thank you so much for joining in on this free call. And I'm saying that, but I want you next week to please bring your family. Tell me about your family, or rather bring somebody else. Jesus, tell me about your family. I don't care. I don't want to know about your family. I do care, but I don't want to know about it. But I want you to please invite some friends, some other married people. Bring them here, okay? This is good stuff, and I want everybody to be a part of it, okay? So we'll see you on next week. God bless you. Please drop a note, drop a line, in the feed at the beginning of the app. Let us know how you feel about it. If you have some suggestions for programs going forward, for discussions going forward, let us know that as well. Okay. God bless you guys. Love y'all, and we'll see you next week.